Fire to feed.
Welcome back to American Arms Channel, ladies and gentlemen. I'm Drake, and as we can tell, I'm here at the desk. And unfortunately, this video is going to be a little bit of a investigative look into why a firearm maybe isn't functioning right before we send it on back to the manufacturer to maybe get it straightened out, and hopefully, when it returns, be 100% squared away. So, the Browning Gold 10 Light. It is the only current production 10 gauge firearm on the American market. To my knowledge, at least it's going to be the only one by a big name manufacturer. Made in Morocco, Japan, for Browning. The Gold 10 has been around for 26 years this year in 2020. So the design has been on the market for the same number of years as I've been alive. So it is a dated design. This year at SHOT Show, 2020 SHOT Show, they did announce that they were updating the ergonomics and aesthetics of the stock, make it look much more like a Maxus or Winchester SX4 stock, which I'm not opposed to. It's a handsome stock in synthetic, and this one's got classic lines, but a new one would serve you just as well. And apparently they claimed in a video that they modified something with the gas system, but didn't go into any sort of detail on their website. Has no information on that actual modification. So to the best of my knowledge, they only changed the stock. But I digress. So this particular shotgun has only had 64 shells through it. A number of those were on the first shots video, and unfortunately we experienced a failure to feed on the third round of cycling. The very third round to be fired out of this gun actually had a misfeed. It jammed the face of the shell right into the bottom of the barrel extension / where there's a slight sort of a feed ramp. And from there on out, we've had problems, a couple issues every once in a while, failure to feed, I think 1 or 2 besides that one. Total failures I've counted out was 10 or 11. I'll have to look at my notes. But out of 64 rounds, that's like a 15+% failure rate. So that's not good. I was going to give it till 100 rounds, but seeing how it would randomly malfunction, especially with failures to eject, I contacted Browning, asked them if that was something that they expected to happen out of federal ammunition. And I also had another concern. The vent rib here does have a slight wiggle or squeak to it. It's not a lot, but I'm kind of OCD that way. When you spend $1,400 on a shotgun, you kind of expect it to be perfect. And I've also noticed that the barrel has a very small amount of forward back play with it tightened all the way down. It's more noticeable with the bolt open. But there are those concerns of mine, which I've enumerated to them in the return form. So this will go back here very shortly. But what I wanted to cover today is why maybe this thing isn't quite cycling right. And maybe what you can look for if you've got a out of warranty Browning Gold 10, you're buying one used, or maybe you just don't want to send it back to Browning if that's just your choice. So what we're going to take a look at today is a little mock-up I've done on my whiteboard here of the Browning Gold 10 action and where I think the trouble areas are. So let's get on close to it and take a look. So I've done a mock-up of what the internals of the gun look like. If we were able to peel away from the ejection port side. Let's say we were able to see through X-ray vision into this receiver, and I did not trace this. Holy crap, I got that pretty dang close to the receiver size. Freehanding that's kind of scary. But what we're taking a look at here is the action. Now, if you don't know, the Browning Gold 10 is a gas system. It is a piston-ringed gas system that uses a fairly traditional method of a sleeved, essentially piston arm with a not so much a tappet, but an operating arm coming off of this larger piston sleeve that's actually attached to the piston rings that goes underneath the barrel ring and gas block. They dual purpose as one. So that is how we actuate the bolt carrier to unlock the tilting breech bolt, sort of a wedge design from the receiver extension, excuse me, not receiver extension, the barrel extension right here. So that is your operating system. And then of course you have a standard setup for how the bolt interfaces with an articulating arm to raise and lower the shell lifter. The way that this controls the round feed is like a Browning Auto 10. It actually has a spring loaded, I guess you could say, nub, a control round button, feed button here, which actually the next round in the magazine sits up against, and then as the action comes back, it allows that round to travel out of the magazine tube. Maybe we'll demonstrate that with a 10 gauge shell here. Comes out of the magazine tube to sit on the lifter, ready to be lifted upwards and then forced into the chamber, of course. So general operating principles right there. Get that out of the way. I'm sure a lot of you guys already understand that. So the issues we are having are twofold. Now, 20% to 10 or 20 to 20% of the issues are a failure to feed. Now, I've noticed this has happened particularly on your Federal hulls. So this is a Federal Black Cloud, Federal Premium Black Cloud, and what's happening is this is slightly longer, and it's happened more on the longer shells, but it shouldn't. These are within SAMI spec. They're not crazy overall length besides the Grand Slams, which I'm actually talking to Federal about at this time regarding the overall length and their failure to function properly. But that's neither here nor there. So these Black Clouds are, they're hit or miss. So are the Blue Box. The Super X Winchesters are actually, the Double X are actually working quite well. So interesting takeaway there, but I have had failures to eject. So the feeding is a very small issue, and what's happening is it's either caught here on what I've labeled as the underside of the barrel extension and failed to actually travel upwards. So that tells me that we've had a failure to completely clear the magazine tube. That could be spring tension. That could be just dragging. There's plenty of Gold 10s out there that actually work, so I'm not so positive that this is simply inherent to a design issue where it just doesn't have the oomph to come back, because this bolt comes back with a significant velocity. It's a very, very quick action. It does have a double nested action spring, so there is a long spring and there is a short spring nested inside of it, so that your initial travel is very, very quick, and then the second spring decelerates that bolt carrier and bolt to keep it from slamming into the rear of the receiver, and there's actually a buffer back here. So it's an extremely violent action designed to handle the large magnum loads. That being said, there shouldn't be any issues with it allowing that shell to travel fast enough. So it's a bit odd, and I don't know what quite the resolution is there. I think something's either not quite right with the spring tube tension or with maybe what is contacting here inside the receiver, and hopefully a Browning tech can solve that. The second feeding issue that's occurring is, and I say that has happened primarily with longer shells when dry cycling, trying to figure out what might be wrong with it. But the primary feed issue that's happening during live fire is that this shell is coming up and it is striking this area with the shell mouth, and it is not clearing it to go into the chamber. So This is not directly related to it, but the feed ramp is what I'm going to call this. It doesn't really have a name in the manual, but it's part of the barrel extension here. This feed ramp is very rough, and it has tool marks left on it. Now, I figured how much of an issue could that be? Shotguns don't really need feed ramps. I'm not seeing any failures to feed. What I'm really seeing is the bolt trying to push this into battery and this thing not lifting up high enough to interface with that actual feed system. So a little odd. That might actually be a timing issue with the lifter. Not quite positive on that, but this has enough tension to run this and lift even the heaviest of the 3.5-inch 10-gauge Magnum shells up into the chamber. So very teeter-tottery in my mind on what is the issue. What I am more positive about is during extraction. Now here's an actual hull, and we can see that this hull is a little mangled up. That's not for me playing with it. This is a fired hull, and the reason this is so mangled up is that this is not ejecting properly. This was squished essentially on its way out. It didn't actually make it out. And what happened is it hung up. It tried to double feed, so we had a live round sitting on the lifter trying to come up, and we had this hull trying to eject, but this hull was squishing this way and pressing into the forward part of the receiver with the hull mouth. So odd. I have seen it happen in shotguns before, and that's typically indicative of one of two things: undergassing or overgassing, where the bullet and carrier are traveling so fast to the rear that they're actually overriding the ejector, and they are failing to get that hull out. It's kind of just jumping the case rim. So if we're looking at the hull rim, I should say, it is jumping the rim and just kind of floating there until the next round, the next shell tries to come up from the bottom. So kind of screwy. Mostly a timing issue. However, what I have noticed is that this ejector, and you probably are not going to be able to see it. We can see there the bolt sits just behind it when at full rearward travel, at least when locked back. At full rearward travel, it travels maybe a quarter of an inch farther before it hits that buffer. So if it's not completely cycling and bouncing off the back of that receiver, it's not getting fully past this. So even if it's hitting that ejector, I think it's either jumping it or it is not fully engaging the ejector. So I think we're either suffering from an undergas or an overgas issue on that. But that may be completely resolved by simply giving this gun a new ejector. Now, a typical ejector that when you see a gun that's set up like this, it's going to have kind of a post to hold it in the wall. So we're looking at it from this. We're not looking at it from this angle. We're looking at it from a side profile. And typically, your ejector being a fixed point, this is your pivot point right here, is going to be a fairly flat piece. Now, sometimes they're rounded over. Sometimes they got a little bit of a bevel to them. This one in particular, when we take a look at it, seems a little shallow. So it's actually doing this. It's more of a wedge shape. And this vertical piece right here is not really all that much. So it's kind of like the hull rim, instead of getting a lot of positive hit. So if we had one that was shaped what I would say normally, like this, what's a little pin post here, we'd have the hull rim engaging in that fashion. With this one, we've got much less hull rim to engage there. So that may have something to do with it. Could this be the out-of-spec component that's causing those ejection issues? Not entirely positive. I suspect so, but then again, this is the only Gold 10 I've actually been able to look at, shoot, and really dive deep into. So I believe the ejector is the #1 issue. As far as feeding goes, that may just be hiccups with different types of ammunition. I feel like the Federal ammunition, for some reason, is not quite there with its reliability. I've seen a lot of complaints about Federal not running properly out of the Gold 10. However, I've also seen guys complain about some of their Gold 10s online. Not cycling Remington or not cycling Winchester, but Winchester overall seems to be the big winner with the big three manufacturers as far as ammunition goes: Remington, Federal, and Winchester. So Winchester seems to win the top of the pile. They also produce the second most ammunition for the 10 gauge currently. So there is that, although they don't have that great of load diversity. I can say, though, the only problem I have had out of Winchester ammunition in the few rounds that I've fired, and I fired a total of about 12 out of the 64 were Winchester, so not a big sampling, but they are shorter overall length as far as fired and unfired on the hull with a star crimp. I can say that at dry cycling, the Federal waterfowl loads work. The Federal turkey load with the star crimp works. The Federal Grand Slam does not. There's something going on with that shell, actually. I don't really believe it's an issue, but it accentuates the feeding issue with the overall length of that loaded cartridge. So lots of funny things going on. Primarily, we're worried about the ejection. I can deal with having to pick slightly shorter hulls, or eventually hand loading and having to pick a slightly shorter hull. It seems that a quality manufacturer, it's more of a smaller production scale manufacturer like Boss Ammunition, like Warwolf Ordnance, is going to produce one, higher quality shell overall, and two, something that is more properly spec'd to cycle in repeaters, such as the Gold 10. So I'm hoping that one, Browning can solve that issue, and then I can achieve at least 95 to 100% reliability. I'd take 99% reliability as long as it will shoot everything else, because I'm not primarily a Federal shooter, and I'm really just worried about it cycling the Warwolf stuff for deer and the Boss stuff for big honkers. So hopefully those two ammunitions will work and play nice with this gun once it comes back. But that's my evaluation of what's going on. That's detailing what is happening inside here, guys, and what I think maybe the solution would be. All right, guys. Well, I hope that was informative, interesting to you. I thought it was kind of something I want to provide to you guys as far as just a little bit deeper look on not just saying, oh, this product is messed up, don't buy it, or, you know, oh, I had problems, but it's perfect now, etc. I'm just giving you a full, honest, try to be objective as possible, review on what's happening, an overview on what's happening with the gun, how it's performing, etc. I really do love the Gold 10 as far as handling and swing and shooting experience go. I've kind of made up some opinions about it so far. As far as fit and finish, aesthetics, etc., ergonomics, how a 26-year-old design stands up to today. But, you know, overall, I'm not going to share that with you until I give a final review. And it's definitely not going to happen until there's a significant round count through this guy. And Thor goes back to Browning to get his little bugs worked out and hopefully running like a top with every bit of fodder and premium ammunition that I feed him. So guys, I hope you enjoyed the video. As always, like, comment, subscribe, hit that notification bell to stay up to date on all things here at American Arms Channel. I'm Drake. God bless. Keep your powder dry. I'll see you in the next video.